Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lamia Kamal Shawi, and I'm the director of the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the first OECD high-level conference on the social and solidarity economy. This is an important milestone. The work that the OECD has done over the last 3 decades reveals a growing political interest in the social and solidarity economy across many countries around the world. The fact that over 1,000 participants will take part in this global forum speaks to that renewed interest. And during the next 4 days, we will hear from leaders of international organizations, from ministers, ambassadors, policymakers, practitioners, experts, and many other actors about their diverse experiences and stories. Before we start this opening session, some quick housekeeping to remind you that simultaneous English and French interpretation will be available. I invite you to use the translation button whenever necessary. And now, without further ado, I'm really delighted to introduce our OECD Secretary General, Mr. Matthias Cormann, who will deliver his opening remarks. Monsieur le Secrétaire Général, c'est à vous.
So thank you very much, the Commissioner, Secretary of State, Director General Ryder, distinguished colleagues. I'm pleased to welcome you to the OECD high-level conference on the social and solidarity economy from the margins to the mainstream. Over the past 50 years, the social economy has expanded significantly and has been a key driver of job creation and economic activity. It now accounts for 6 to 8% of GDP in most EU countries and around 10%, in fact, of the labor force in France and Belgium. Some cooperatives, such as Desjardins in Canada and Mondragon in Spain, rank among the largest businesses in their sectors. The social and solidarity economy is also at the heart of the OECD's local employment and economic development program. Through the work of that program, the OECD has been pioneering international efforts to help countries, regions and cities drive and capitalize on the social economy for over 2 decades. This work has benefited greatly from the support of the European Commission. A testament to this positive and productive partnership has been the launch of the Global Action to promote social and solidarity economy ecosystems in 2020, which will cover more than 30 countries. We have set up a series of peer learning partnerships to build a global community of practice across 130 organizations on a range of key topics, such as the internationalization of the social economy and the role of the social economy in the empowerment of women. To better support countries, the OECD is also developing international guidelines on designing legal frameworks and measuring the social impact of the social and solidarity economy, as well as guiding principles for conducive policy environments that allow all stakeholders to fully participate and benefit from the social economy. Looking ahead to the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, the social economy can be an important driver of growth and general well-being. The social economy organizations have continuously proven themselves during this and previous crises by directly addressing social challenges and by pioneering and mainstreaming business models that are innovative, sustainable, and resilient. In fact, during the 2008 crisis, employment in social enterprises grew by 11.5% in Belgium and by 20% in Italian social cooperatives. So it's no coincidence that many countries are putting the social economy at the heart of their recovery packages. In France and Spain, for example, there's a dedicated focus on the social economy's ability to transform our economies and societies. However, the social economy has often been at the margins of the political discourse. To capitalize on its potential, we need to recognize its value, raise its visibility, and establish its place within our economies. Over the next 4 days, policymakers, practitioners, and experts will address these very important questions. Allow me to highlight 3 policy priorities to complement your discussions. First, we need to ensure that legal frameworks for the social economy are effective and help remove market distortions that hold it back. Current frameworks can be restrictive or unfit to the needs of the social economy, for example, by hindering the access to finance of public and private markets. Secondly, we need to continue to enhance awareness of the role the social economy can play in optimizing the strength and the quality of the recovery. In this endeavor, fostering new partnerships with the public and private sectors, as well as civil society, will be key. Third, we need to collect and provide more and better data. We lack internationally harmonized, objectively comparable data to capture the contribution of the social economy to GDP and to employment. Even more, we need to measure its social impact, as the benefits of the social economy go well beyond mere economic impacts. This evidence base is critical to design better policies and for benchmarking countries' progress. So colleagues, by scaling up the social economy, leveraging social economy organizations for the recovery, and achieving social impact, optimizing social impact, you're all playing a pivotal role in bringing the social economy from the margins to the mainstream. The OECD is ready to keep working for you and with you to help design, develop, and deliver better policies for better lives and building on the power of the social economy. Thank you very much, Lamay.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Now I would like to invite Nicolas Schmit, European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights, to deliver his remarks.
Dear Secretary General, dear Director General, dear Ministers, dear friends, let me first, with some delay, I must say, congratulate Mr. Coleman for having been appointed Secretary General of the OECD. It's the first time we have the opportunity to meet, at least online, and it's a great pleasure that we meet in this particular context. OECD organizing this high-level meeting, high-level conference on social economy. And this shows the importance of the OECD and also your commitment on topics like the social dimension linked to the economic dimension. So thank you very much for organizing this conference. And thank you also to all the colleagues from the OECD for joining forces with the European Commission to deliver the global action on promoting social and solidarity economy ecosystems. Our world looked different in January 2020 when this global action was launched. Since then, the COVID-19 pandemic has had dramatic consequences, but also made clear that more solidarity is needed. This makes the case for supporting the social economy even stronger than before, as the Secretary General just described it. Social economy figures are telling. Paid employment in the social economy varies between less than 1% and more than 10% amongst member states. And this shows us that there is a lot of potential for job creation in this social economy in the EU, but also in many OECD countries. Social economy organizations and social enterprises, which already make up about 10% of businesses in the EU, contribute largely to territorial cohesion and local economic development by delivering social impact to their communities, and especially, again, social services and jobs, which is extremely important. Social economy organizations share the commitment to put people and social goals first, and this is key in the current juncture, where new policies, new measures, and funds are devoted to the recovery of our economies and societies. Today, growing numbers of consumers wish to consume ethically, and this can be an important driver for the social economy. Take circular economy, for example. It is estimated that on average, circular economy social enterprises create around 70 jobs per 1,000 tons collected with a view of being reused. More reuse translates into more jobs, and with the help of social economy, there will be decent jobs supporting social inclusion, especially inclusion in the labor market also for vulnerable people. And because it is a sustainable, innovative, and inclusive, the social economy business model has great potential to ensure the recovery will be fair, including for women, including for young people, but also including for vulnerable people. Social economy ecosystems can play a key role in creating jobs and producing social impact. In particular, the interplay with both public sector in the provision of social and care services and private companies in several sectors, supply chain of mainstream business, holds a potential for continuous development of the social economy activities. With the social economy, we have also a powerful tool to lead the green and digital transitions by example. For example, social enterprises active in the area of reuse and repair support the transition towards a low carbon, resource efficient and inclusive economy. Previous EU initiatives have already improved framework conditions for social economy organizations. But a number of difficulties remain, and this has also been highlighted by the Secretary General. It is hard for policymakers to design legal, policy, and fiscal frameworks that recognize and reward social impact of social economy organizations because of their differences. The International Guide on Legal Frameworks for Social and Solidarity Economy, which is being prepared under the Global Action, will help address this challenge. The Commission and OECD have also launched the Better Entrepreneurship Policy Tool, which supports individuals and policymakers at all levels to assess and improve their inclusive and social entrepreneurship ecosystems. There is also a need for capacity building to strengthen managerial skills. Here again, the EU and OECD have worked together to provide relevant policy guidance. The Commission will adopt an action plan on the social economy by the end of 2021, by which we want to address these remaining challenges and make the most of social economy potential to achieve fair and sustainable green, digital, and demographic transitions. Our priority is to make it easier for social economy stakeholders to operate through measures boosting the social economy and its visibility. The aim is to provide support for member states, local authorities, and stakeholders to build the right enabling framework conditions and improve access to public and private finance and procurement. We want to support social economy organizations to scale up, boost social innovation, and address local and territorial challenges. We will also seek to strengthen the role of social economy in EU external action. Stakeholders from across the globe can benefit from sharing their experience and can contribute to the international discussion and exchange of good practices. EU funding will continue to support the social economy. For example, the European Social Fund Plus asks every member state to dedicate a priority to social innovation in their programs. And our 197 million are earmarked to fund transnational cooperation supporting scaling and replication of social innovation. Today is a good opportunity to put the social economy where it belongs, right at the heart of our collective action, with the aim to build a fair, more inclusive, and sustainable society. And I think here the OECD has an important role to play. And again, I thank you for organizing this conference. And I'm looking forward also for further good cooperation with the OECD, especially also in this very important field. So thank you, and I wish you a very productive and successful conference.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Commissioner. And again, thank you for the long-standing support of the European Commission to the work of the OECD. So now we are going to start the panel discussion, and I'm really delighted to engage in a conversation with two real champions of the social and solidarity economy. Mrs. Olivia Grégoire, Secretary of State for Social and Responsible Economy of France, and Mr. Guy Ryder, Director General of the International Labour Organization, the ILO. And in between their respective interventions, we will display two video messages, one from Mrs. Luisa Maria Alcade Luján, Secretary of Labour and Social Welfare of Mexico, and the other one from Mrs. Patricia Toya, member of the European Parliament and co-chair of the European Parliament Intergroup on the Social Economy. So as the OECD Secretary General mentioned in his remarks, countries are looking to mainstream the social economy in their policies, in their recovery strategies, but their actions are constrained. They are constrained by a number of institutional, regulatory, and financial obstacles. So now we want to hear how our panelists are addressing these challenges and what types of strategies and actions they are pursuing to support the development and the mainstreaming of the social and solidarity economy. So now let me switch to French and start with Olivia Grégoire. Madame la Ministre, la France est pionnière.
Madam Minister, France is a pioneer and a major supporter of the social and solidarity economy. France introduced many initiatives to support this sector and its stakeholders. I'm thinking here particularly of the Pact for Impact, to which we contributed at the OECD. Madam Minister, could you share with us some of your flagship actions as well as the major projects that you initiated or that are currently underway, including as part of the French presidency of the European Council? Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me all right. Again, well, let me greet Commissioner Schmidt. I'm also delighted to be able to exchange with Mr. Corman and all OECD teams that I know quite well. And I've had the opportunity to, well, become familiar with their involvement for the social economy. I'm delighted to meet you again in, well, that's video conferencing, but still, we are together. So let me first try and answer the question you asked me. I'd like to summarize my address with 3 keywords, which symbolizes what France has been trying to do for more than a year, for 18 months, since the start of the crisis, but also since I was appointed in the last summer. And I'm going to take up themes which are very important for Commissioner Schmidt, but which were also mentioned by Mr. Corman in his address. I think that the 3 challenges for the social and solidarity economy in the coming years will be the following: streamlining or simplification, cooperation, and innovation. France, through its recovery plan, and this is a first, it's historical, France has really earmarked 1.3 billion euros with a call for projects, about 15 calls for projects which are specifically dedicated to players of the social and solidarity economy. This economy, this type of economy in France, has really demonstrated its resistance, its resilience during the crisis. Let me just share a figure with you which I think is interesting to know. On average, the social and solidarity economy in France accounts for more than 2 million employees, actually 2.4 members of the working population, 14% of jobs in the private sector, and on average 50 to 100,000 jobs are created every year by the social and solidarity economy. Between March 2020 and December 2020, the social economy saw less than 1% of its jobs disappear, 50,000 jobs approximately, which by all accounts, according to all players of the social and solidarity economy, is a pity, but it's much less than what we could have expected.
The social and solidarity economy was able to resist because it holds within itself principles of agility and cooperation. And therefore, it was possible to adapt to the reality of the pandemic over the past 18 months. Now, when I refer to simplification, and as you said it yourself, it is urgent, and I know Commissioner Schmidt agrees that it is strategic. We need to simplify things for the players in the social and solidarity economy in terms of the European structure in Brussels, and in particular access to certain facilities. SSC in Europe as a whole has shown that it is resilient, but we politicians will have to be there to give more easy access through one-stop shops to be able to obtain financing, etc., because the time that elapses between requests and answers is far too long. So over the months to come, their life will have to be made easier because their resilience has been shown, and as was said, it is a priority. Now, we've also tried to do this in France by setting up specific communication aiming at the players in SSE who sometimes feel a little overwhelmed being in the midst of the more mainstream economy, and it's very difficult for them to put forward the specificity of their business models. So France, but also Europe, should be able to offer the possibility for them to put forward their specificity. And then cooperation. Cooperation is central to what social and solidarity economy is. I'd say that historically, for dozens of years now, cooperation has been one of the main pillars of SSE. Let me give you a couple of examples. Accor, which is the largest French cooperative, which is an example in sharing of values. They are world leaders in smart cards, and this entity is highly competitive, and it is competitive in terms of innovation vis-à-vis the Chinese, the Germans. They are extremely competitive. So that cooperative, just like those you mentioned in Italy and Spain, they today in France don't have a system by which there could be mutual recognition, and this is something which could hamper development. So we have what we call NESUS, socially useful social economy or enterprise. An example would be Phoenix, which collects foodstuffs that haven't been sold in order to reuse them, redistribute them. And at the heart of the crisis, they recruited 15 people. So this is strong growth, and they showed that it is something which might want to develop in Europe, and yet there isn't any common mutual recognition. So I gave you these two examples. And I think that one of the big challenges is that the players in the social and solidarity economy need, as Mr. Corman said, there is very, very strong potential for growth, but there are also obstacles. So we really need at European level to work on cooperation and mutual recognition. Now, very briefly, innovation. We public players, institutions, we need to act, and the state may need to play a stronger role, but we must also open up the windows of the SSE in order to meet the legitimate ambitions. And I'm referring to funding, and I shall be brief, probably we'll be able to come back to this. There are these social impact bonds, which I already discussed at length with Commissioner Schmidt. They, in my opinion, are a new form of public-private partnership focus on performance of environmental, social, or solidarity performance, and this should make it easier to give finance to those working towards a social and solidarity economy. This is highly promising. I think that this is something which could benefit the rest of the economy. So to quote you, Mr. Corman, we need to simplify things, and there's innovation and cooperation, which are also very important. As I said, we must open wide the windows and doors of social and solidarity economy in order for it to reach 20 or 30% of GDP. And that is a true possibility. So we have set up a certain number of systems, support systems, as have most countries. But our challenge, once again today, is to help them to innovate, simplify, and make possible cooperation to make things easier. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. Now, to come back to what you were saying about international cooperation, could you maybe very quickly tell us what the main obstacles are in order for a true international ecosystem of SSE to emerge? Well, I'll go straight to the point. I think that today the SSE players tend to be focused on the local or national level. And if we want to leverage the positive effects of SSE, we need to set up coordination. Now, just for a brief minute, this is something we did in France a few years ago with an agreement for the opening of solidarity and social enterprises, and there are very precise rules in terms of operation, but there's also the idea of general interest. So an ISUS label given to an enterprise means that such a company, if they wish to open up beyond the French borders, will have to start all over again, go through all these stages, very cumbersome administrative stages. This company will have to prove its specificities to the public administration, and that is something which probably will discourage many companies, and therefore it is an obstacle to development. I know Europe is working hard at this, so I feel optimistic, but it is essential that we should have mutual recognition of enterprises, starting within the European framework, but that is the least. One could imagine going well beyond that in the future, so that these socially useful solidarity enterprises be mutually recognized without having to start from scratch if they wish to operate in other countries. You and I are well aware of the legal obstacles, regulatory obstacles, which quite clearly are an obstacle to the expansion of SSEs. So this is something which makes a mutual recognition very difficult. So this is something that has been worked on for many years, but I think it's high time that it be maybe recognized that this mutual recognition is really called for now to encourage development. So there's this matter of impact. France has set up innovating solutions, public-private endeavors. So I should like to know what the outcome is of these efforts in France, and could this be also used in other countries? Well, I modernized the social impact bonds, and this is something I've been doing for over a year now. To reply to your question, it is not something I'd usually want to say, but it has, I believe, been a success. And given the quality of the SSE projects, some said they won't be able to bring in €1 million projects. They won't be able to go ahead. It's all too complicated. And yet, we have injected over 50 million euros over 1 year in social impact bonds for the circular economy, equal opportunities, and professional insertion and rehabilitation. So the state at macro level is not always the best to answer local endeavors. So in terms of political philosophy, quite clearly the idea is a contract is signed between the state, local actors, and enterprises with objectives which are social or environmental. If the objectives are met, if the player manages to meet the objectives, then the state takes on all of the initial funding. That is new. It's social innovation applied from the political level to the players in SSE. And it also shows the trust of the state in these players who are becoming increasingly professional. So last summer, we have stepped this up, and I am hoping to go further to mainstream this sort of contract. And we have been working on this in very concrete terms. And we're not talking about 20, 20, 30 million euro contracts, but possibly as much as 100 million euros. And Europe and Commissioner Schmid is well aware of these possibilities, and I think it would be very useful to suggest that these social impact bonds be rolled out. Because we see what we are up against here in France is very similar to what you're up against at European level. So if everybody were to come together around this social and environmental nexus, we would most certainly be able to scale up the impact on the social and solidarity economy. So this is something new. It's developing rather well, and I think that Europe is a short-term horizon. I am an optimist. That is definitely what we're aiming for, and I hope that in the year to come, and possibly within Nicolas Schmidt's SSE plan, we will find a way for countries to come together with SSE players and common funding in order to cater to the social and environmental problems we are experiencing. And there are some contracts of this type in Northern Europe that are remarkable. Finland, our friends in Finland, I think, are record holders. One contract for 17 million euros. So that shows that things are moving in that direction. So let us not miss the boat and do something about it. It has shown that it is useful and has done so for the past 12 years in France. Well, thank you very much, Minister.
To the video message by Luisa Maria Alcade Luján, Secretary of Labor and Social Welfare of Mexico, who unfortunately could not join us live today. So please note that the video will be in Spanish with English subtitles, but again, French translation will be provided if you put the button. So video, please.
So, first of all, unfortunately, the sound of the video makes it impossible for the interpreters to follow. There is a great deal of echo. The interpreters apologize.
También como países están entrelazados. Hemos aprendido que por el bien de todos debemos dejar atrás modelos económicos y laborales excluyentes que durante mucho tiempo, décadas, ampliaron las desigualdades entre nuestras sociedades. Hoy más que nunca resulta fundamental buscar alternativas que nos permitan reorganizar y reorientar el rumbo de las economías hacia una nueva etapa que requerirá no solo un replanteamiento de sus formas productivas y de consumo, sino también de las propias relaciones humanas que participan en su desarrollo. Ante esta coyuntura, apostar por la generación de un sistema productivo basado en la economía social y solidaria puede representar una gran oportunidad para estimular la producción y la generación de recursos de forma sostenible en favor de la economía, pero desde un sistema que fomente nuevos valores de trabajo y de comunidad. Hemos, en estos casi 3 años de gobierno, de la mano del presidente López Obrador, encaminado las políticas a dignificar el trabajo. Hemos de manera decidida impulsado una política de salario mínimo que a casi 3 años ha logrado recuperar el 44% de su poder adquisitivo. Hemos también logrado con una reforma histórica el acercarnos a la libertad y a la democracia sindical. Que los trabajadores cuenten con la herramienta del voto secreto y de una participación activa en sus negociaciones colectivas para poder acceder a mejores condiciones de trabajo. Un sistema de justicia distinto, transparente, abierto, que realmente se pueda acceder a defender los derechos. Hemos acabado con figuras excluyentes como el outsourcing, que han permitido que se vadan las responsabilidades laborales, y hemos apostado como nunca a la juventud. Con el programa Jóvenes Construyendo el Futuro, casi 2 millones de aprendices en nuestro país se capacitan en las diferentes empresas, talleres, negocios para fortalecer sus habilidades. Estamos convencidos que ahora más que nunca debemos apostar por una economía mucho más incluyente, más justa y más solidaria. Un abrazo.
Interesting view from Minister Akade about the great potential of the social and solidarity economy to promote new labor and communities' values. Now, I would like to turn to our second panelist, Mr. Guy Ryder, Director General of the International Labour Organization, the ILO. DG Ryder, the ILO is a big believer that responses to the challenges of the future of work lie in the social economy, and your organization has done a lot to raise the profile of the field. Could you please tell us, Mr. Ryder, more about the actions your organization is undertaking to support the social and solidarity economy?
Well, thank you very much indeed. Firstly, my greetings to all participants, and my particular thanks to Secretary General Corman and to Commissioner Schmidt for their leadership in this very important event. Well, as you've just said, the commitment and involvement of the International Labour Organization with the social and solidarity economy is truly a historic one. Our founding Director General, and we're 100 years old, was a noted French cooperativist, Albert Thomas. We set up our first cooperative unit in 1920, and we've continued to work in this area over the years that have followed. What have we done? Well, one thing we've done, and I think this is a unique contribution, is we have negotiated and promoted the international labour standards that we think should guide work in the promotion of the social and solidarity economy. The latest standard in that regard is our recommendation number 193, adopted in 2002 on the promotion of cooperatives. In addition, since 2010, we've had annual academies at our International Training Centre in Turin, which brings together each year over 1,000 participants, all of the stakeholders, I think it is fair to say, including the OECD. And the next such academy will take place in November. We're looking forward very much to it. In the broader multilateral system, and let's not forget, the ILO is an agency of the United Nations. The ILO co-founded, and we're currently co-chairing, the UN's Interagency Task Force on the Social and Solidarity Economy, brings together 17 UN agencies, plus the OECD, plus a number of civil society organizations. More recently, if I can put it in the current context of the COVID-19 crisis, the role and importance of social and solidarity enterprises has come out both in the Declaration on the Future of Work we adopted our centenary in 2019, and more recently an important call for action on human-centered recovery adopted by our conference in June of this year. That's the record up to date. The next thing to wait for will be what we think is going to be a really very important discussion that will take place at our conference next June. We'll be having our first general discussion around the issue of the social and solidarity economy and its role in a human-centered recovery from COVID-19. And by citing all of these examples of the work that we've done, I want to emphasize that not only has cooperativism and the social and solidarity economy been a constant in the work of the ILO for over a century, it's very much part of today's news and the solutions to today's problem. There is a real actuality about the debate that's taking place here and the issues that we have to address together. And there are perhaps two factors I want to feed into the discussion, which I think might highlight the opportunity of this conference. The first, of course, is the gravity of the world of work crisis that we're living through. COVID-19 is par excellence the health emergency that's turned into an unprecedented social and economic crisis, and we're not out of it, far from it. We're embarked upon a very fragile and uneven recovery process, and it is clear to everybody that the ILO that social and solidarity enterprises have a key role to play in the recovery process. And coincidental with that, it seems to me that in recent years, there has been a real upsurge in debate, which perhaps overflows the issues that we're looking at specifically today, but a real debate about the social role of enterprises in general. It's as if on the 50th anniversary of Milton Friedman's famous pronouncement about the role of enterprises, maximize profit and shareholder value, there's been a real rethink about the role of enterprises in our society, even amongst enterprises who you would have thought at first glance had been very faithful to Mr. Friedman's strictures for half a century. And I think it's very important. Crisis, a genuine rethink about the roles of enterprises in our society, and then, of course, the specifics of the social and solidarity economy. Here, I just want to counterpose, if you like, the values and particular added value that, in the ILO's view, the social and solidarity economy brings to our societies. I'm going to quote from our recommendation, number 193, when it defines or sets out the values that underpin the social and solidarity economy. Here I go. Self-help, self-organization, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, solidarity, honesty, openness, social responsibility, care for others. That seems to me like a pretty good wish list of what people are looking for in economic activity these days. Add to that the benefits, and this is a matter not of opinion, but of record, of what the social and solidarity economy has brought to our society. Well, resilience in economic activity, never more evident than in times of crisis. Efficiency. You know, this is not a second best option in terms of economic results. Inclusivity, and of course, innovation has been emphasized by others. And added to that, of course, is the size of the social and solidarity economy as it exists today. And we've had some numbers already shared with us today. One is almost tempted to take issue with the title of the conference. Now, are we really at the margin at the moment, looking to move to the mainstream? I think we are, in the sense not of the economic importance of this economy, but in terms of the level of political attention and the level of political priority which the social and solidarity economy gets. There, I think we can say we need to move from the margins of public discourse and action straight into the mainstream. So I rejoin the logic of the conference on that basis. And it seems to me you set up this conference to really tackle some of the key issues. They've already been referred to by previous speakers. We have to make legal frameworks appropriate to the success of these enterprises. That's not always the case, be it because of complexities which have been referred to by the Secretary of State, or simply the bad fit of legislative frameworks. Public policy issues. We have to promote social and solidarity enterprises as a matter of public policy priority. Issues of partnerships, and something which we need to hold ourselves to, being careful to measure and to be attentive to the impact that the activities of this economy truly have. So for all of these reasons, I find this conference really timely, really important, and please take note that we'll be following up next year at the ILO with our own June discussion, which I hope will pick up on many of the issues that will be canvassed here. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryder. You made a lot of very interesting points. And in your intervention, you recalled us that actually the ILO is part of the UN system. You define it as being an agency of the UN system. So an obvious question for you is, how do you see the work of the ILO on the social economy contributing to achieving the SDGs?
Well, indeed, in line with what I've just said, I think we have to make the promotion of the social and solidarity economy a key component. Can't be asked to do all of the work, but a key component of moving towards the SDGs, these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which make up the UN 2030 agenda. Here's the bad news. We've got to reach these goals. We've committed to reach these goals by 2030. We're in the last decade. Unfortunately, pre-COVID-19, we weren't on track. We were behind on practically all of the 17 goals. With COVID-19, I'm afraid it's even worse. And in some cases, we've moved back to behind the starting point from which we departed. So we really need to inject new life and new momentum into the pursuit of the SDGs. And if I could just focus in on one of those SDGs, it would be SDG number 8. That's the one that commits the world to produce inclusive growth, decent work for all. Well, we're not there, are we? In the midst of a crisis which we estimate to have cost 255 full-time job equivalents last year, and to have had an impact on labour markets 4 times as severe as the financial crisis of 2008-2009 did. You can see the task, the mountain that we have to climb together. And for all of the reasons that I've tried to set out, it's really important that the social and solidarity economy and all of its potential is brought to this task, and that we work together in the UN and in other places to make that a reality.
Thank you. Mr. Ryder, you also, in your intervention, you mentioned the fact that in your upcoming International Labour Conference in June 2022, the ILO will hold a general discussion on the social and solidarity economy for a human-centered future of work. This is really new, and again, it points to the growing attention from government and social partners on this sector. This sector being a critical driver to address the challenges of the future of work, especially during this post-COVID context. So, Director General, my question is, what are your expectations for this discussion in June 2022? What would you like to see as the key outcomes of this discussion, the key result?
Well, to revert to what I previously said, part of this discussion is, of course, to learn from each other. We'll be bringing together governments, workers and employers from our 187 member states around the world. And they will have very different experience of cooperatives and social and solidarity enterprises. Let's be honest, some will have very little experience. Others will have a great deal to share. And I think that already that sharing of experience can be enormously important. Secondly, and building on that type of sharing of experience, it is precisely to try to establish fix in people's minds and in policymakers' minds that really this social and solidarity economy is part of the answers that societies are looking for, not just in ethical terms, values terms, but in terms of the economic and social outcomes that social and solidarity enterprises are capable of producing. And that will, I hope, have that effect of bringing the debate into the mainstream and have people act on these issues, not as a matter of detail or a matter of secondary recourse to second best options, but as a real cutting edge way of dealing with the sometimes quite dramatic economic and social challenges that we face. And perhaps a last thing, and I attach enormous importance to this, is the issue of partnership. You know, the ILO has got almost a cultural attachment to the social and solidarity economy. It's been part of our DNA forever. But we need to work with other international organizations, be it in the UN task force, be it with our friends in the OECD or elsewhere, to combine our efforts to lever financing for this economy, to make sure that the full potential, which I think people are increasingly aware of, is realized in ways that should and which can change and benefit people's lives.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder, and you can count on the OECD to join forces with the ILO together with the European Commission to advance this very important agenda. Now, before we conclude this opening session, I'd like to ask the colleagues to play the second video message now from Patricia Toya, who I recall is a member of the European Parliament and the co-chair of the European Parliament Intergroup on the social economy. The video message will be in French and will be translated into English, so don't forget again to use the translation button. Please, colleagues, let's have the video.
Bonjour à tout le monde, bonjour à toutes les autorités présentes, à tous les participants.
Hello to you all. Warm welcome to you all. I would have loved to be with you, but you know that we have a plenary meeting in Strasbourg this week, and connections in the city, like for all European cities, is difficult, and so that's why I was unable to be with you in Paris. But my greetings, warm greetings, for several reasons. The first one is that the world of the social economy and its actors very dear to my heart, to my experience of institutional and social work, and really a very warm greeting. Also because I believe that social economy is a very valuable asset for mankind, for society. It is valuable because it provides work for many, many people, also the most vulnerable people. And it is a way to organize labor and to make sure that it is human-centered. I think that is essential. And I think that this way of working, this sort of business model, so to speak, it would be essential to be able to export it in the whole economic sphere, because I believe it's a very good example for market enterprises who can draw a lot from this experience, from this business model. And it also provides very clear suggestions to how improve labor organization, production organization in all sectors and formats. I think the theme that you have set out for your work is essential, and it is very pertinent. It's very, because now is the time to do this now. Ahora, adesso, maintenant. It is the moment has come to set social economy on the main table, and that to make it part and parcel of our parliamentary work for all governments. It is the framework for reconstruction of the plan Next Generation Europe. You know that each European member country has prepared its own national plan for recovery and resilience. And we have investment plans in all sectors, digital, green economy, and also social sustainability, which is essential. These three action areas, this will make it possible for us to achieve our goals. This is very much what the Commission wants to achieve, and is deeply convinced that this will happen. And Commissioner Schmidt has prepared an action plan which is essential in this regard. So social economy is not at the margin anymore. It is part and parcel of everything we do. We at the Parliament have always been convinced of that. We believe that social economy has a major role to play. We have an intergroup, or a group that gathers many partners for social economy. Part of this group. I have been the chair for this group. I've been here for 15 years. I've been working in this group, and I work on many documents with my colleagues that the Parliament has approved, and we promote projects, plans, and all sorts of things. We are going to keep up the good work, and I can assure you that Parliament will always be a major partner for the sector of SSE. Thank you. Thank you very much, Patricia Toya, who unfortunately was unable to be with us. There was one sentence she said. She said social and economic and social economy is a valuable asset for mankind.
sentence to end our discussion. If I have myself to take one message away, is that we still have a lot of challenges to address to take the social economy from the margin to the mainstream, but we are on the right path, and I'm sure our discussions over the next 4 days will provide many answers. I would like to thank our speakers for their insightful contribution and powerful messages. Allow me please to thank my team in the OECD, especially Karen Maguire, Antonella Noya, and Amal Chevreau, and all the team. There are so many. They are here. They have been working very hard to organize this week. So, dear all, I would like now to invite you to go back to the InWink conference page and switch to our next session. The name is Building Back Better, the Social Economy as a Driving Force for Change. It's going to start in a couple of 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you again. Thank you all for your attention, and enjoy the Global Forum on the Social and Solidarity Economy. Thank you so much.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am glad to welcome you all and my panelists to this session, who will focus on building back with the social economy. I am Antonella Noia, the head of the Social Economy and Innovation Unit at the Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities at the OECD. So I will introduce them later, but we have here Shigeru Tanaka from Japan, Laurence Quark from Korea, Diana Wells from United States, and Vic van Buren from Geneva, and Victor Meseguer from Belgium. So this session is an interactive one, so I really warmly invite all participants to write their questions in the chat, as the panelists will address some of them at the end of the session. And for this session as well, we can benefit from the interpretation, and thanks to the interpreters. And so we have just had a fantastic opening session, which made clear that the time is really ripe for government to support social and solidarity economy, so that it can unleash its full potential to contribute to build back better for an inclusive, sustainable, green, and digital recovery. So without further ado, I would like to ask to Nadim Ahmed, Deputy Director of the Center of Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities, to help us set the scene so that we can frame our discussion later. And Nadine, we would like to hear from you in which way social economy has helped countries and people during the pandemics, and what can governments do to support further its development. And Nadine, you are welcome to take the floor, and you will have 10 minutes for your speech. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Antonella, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. I mean, I want to begin by saying how delighted I am to set the scene for this second session of events we have to look forward to over the next 4 days. And how particularly delighted I am to be joined by leading international social economy networks, helping to pioneer the innovations and in turn the societal and economic transformations that we just heard the OECD Secretary General describe in his opening remarks. And innovations and transformations that are driving the social economy out of the margins and very much into the mainstream. And I'm particularly looking forward to hearing the responses to the three core questions that we'll be addressing in this session. Questions and answers that will prove invaluable for the forthcoming sessions. And so, I mean, how can the social economy help countries build back better? What can governments at national and sub-national levels do to unleash its potential? And how can social economy networks contribute and support a shift to the mainstream? Now, these aren't, or at least shouldn't be seen, at least from a personal perspective, as new questions. But the social economy has time and again proven that it can be a driving force for change, and indeed building back better, not just in the current crisis, but in previous crises too. In every major global crisis, the social economy, as we heard earlier from the ILO's Director General, Guy Ryder, has delivered on three fronts, each guided by a need to be innovative, inclusive, and critically, especially today, resilient, by providing immediate and quick relief responses, often in partnership with national and sub-national governments, but also to reach the parts they often struggle to reach, by implementing long-lasting solutions such as work integration for vulnerable groups, innovative care facilities for the elderly, formalization of work through cooperatives to support individuals and communities. And last but not least, by being pioneers, inspiring wider business communities to do business with purpose, and in doing so, adopting practices and working methods originating in the social economy. And perhaps the key difference this time around is the strength and mental appreciation and support for change, support that comes from governments, businesses, and civil society, recognizing the critical, perhaps watershed importance of a fair transition with more inclusion, more climate change action, and more people-centered growth and development. Support driven by the evidence of its transformative potential for our societies and economies. And so the lesson from this crisis is not that the social economy is important, rather it is too important not to be in the mainstream. Indeed, even outside of the mainstream, the social economy has expanded its reach over the years. It's a major contributor to job creation and employment with social impact. In Europe, as the SG mentioned, the social economy contributes around 6 to 8% of GDP in most EU countries, or in other words, around 11 million jobs in the EU alone. And the efforts of OECD countries and beyond to adopt laws, strategies, and action plans to promote the social economy will no doubt help to consolidate and strengthen its position, and in turn, help advance social inclusion, reduce inequalities, and create jobs, including for disadvantaged groups that often struggle to enter the labour market. In short, help build back better. Now, Spain's Recovery, Transformation and Resiliency Plan, for example, dedicates funds from its €69.5 billion national recovery package to boost the social economy, including several measures to support the circular economy, an area where the social economy has been a pioneer, including through training opportunities for different groups and by stimulating collaboration across local value chains with other actors, including policymakers, SMEs, researchers, and of course, civil society. And as we heard earlier from Minister Gregoire, France has launched more than 15 calls of projects, ensuring that more than €1 billion of its France Relance recovery plan will benefit the social economy. And among many, many others, Portugal's recovery plan, for example, Recuperar Portugal, dedicated €83 million alone to strengthening social responses in Madeira, exclusively through social economy organisations. So these plans are all testament to the transformative role of the social economy and its ability to create lasting effects on and benefits for our communities and societies, in particular, socially and environmentally responsible practices. For example, in Belgium, social economy organisations have historically been pioneers in the textile recycling sector and in running work integration programmes that create employment for vulnerable groups. These efforts have been so successful that new players are entering the field. In Brazil, Denmark, India, and the US, and indeed many other countries, social economy organizations play a significant role in revitalizing territories, especially rural and remote areas, that are often ignored by mainstream economic actors through the production of clean energy, the provision of basic services, and diversification of job opportunities. And so we need to ensure that public action and support is sustained. However, it should be designed and implemented with social economy actors and networks. And we're very lucky to have some of those actors with us here today to offer their views on this. And those actions and support can take a number of forms, but perhaps the four most important include: one, ensuring better access to finance. We need to create and nurture environments that enable and promote social innovation and experimentation that can help the most promising actors scale up, including by internationalization. And we'll hear more about that tomorrow. In Ireland, for example, the €5 million Innovate Together Fund focuses on addressing critical social or environmental issues related to the COVID-19 crisis. Two, ensuring better access to markets, for example, by capitalizing on the potential of procurement strategies that focus on sustainable and inclusive social procurement, as is the case in Korea, for example. Three, promoting greater collaboration with the social economy to capitalize on their proven experience and their abilities to engage directly with communities. And tomorrow's session on peer-to-peer learning will also help drive this. Four, increasing the visibility of the social economy through the development of tools that help organizations evaluate their market and non-market impacts. And as we heard from the SG, supporting the development of measurement tools and methods, as well as their adoption by social economy organizations, could help them better demonstrate and in turn help increase their economic and social impact. And we'll hear more about that on Thursday. Now, there are, of course, many other actions that will help to drive that momentum and move the social economy into the mainstream. And over the next few days, we'll hear from many stakeholders that will help drive this change. But as the SG said, we can all play a role in achieving this. And in that respect, I'm really very eager to hear from the impressive stakeholders we have lined up for this session: Social Economy Europe, the Global Social Economy Forum, Ashoka, REPES, and the UN's Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy, to which, of course, the OECD participated as a full member. To hear about their actions and their vision to unleash the full potential of the social economy, to mainstream it, and of course, to build back better. And with that, Antonella, I pass the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Nadine, for such an inspiring start of our panel, and also for reminding us that the social economy is too important not to be on the mainstream. So I would like now to start our discussion with the panelists. So there will be 3 rounds of questions if time allows. So I hope that every panelist will really stick to the time which has been allocated to them. So I will first start with Victor Meseguer, our first panelist, who is the director of Social Economy Europe, which is the EU-level representative for social economy organization. It is an impressive network which gathers some 2.8 million social economy enterprises and organizations, and it is also the Secretariat of the European Parliament Intergroup on Social Economy, whose important role to support social economy has just been presented by Ms. Patrizia Toia. So, Victor, Nadine was just mentioning the importance of raising visibility and recognition of social economy, and I think that this is a shared, really common understanding. So what do you think that could be done to achieve this goal, and what is your organization doing to support this? You have 3 minutes, Victor. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Antonella, also for inviting us to this great event. And by the way, the opening session was extremely energizing. So thank you very much for that and for organizing this global effort. Regarding visibility, what do we do? So indeed, boosting visibility of the social economy is fundamental. People need to know, entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs need to know that social economy entrepreneurship is also one of the ways of doing business. That actually social economy entrepreneurship has an added value because it's of its collective dimension, because of its capacity to put together strategic projects. And for that, basically, entrepreneurs all over Europe and all over the world need to know that social economy is the menu. By the way, as the French State Secretary said before, social economy is not always in the menu, because to be in the menu, the social economy, it's not a label, it's not an understanding. It is to be translated into legal forms. So we need legislation, we need a common understanding. And by the way, and this is very important, we don't only need legislation, we need modern legislation and modern public policies, because the social economy is not just a heritage of the past. It's not only about the importance of agri-cooperatives 50 years ago, which remains, by the way. The social economy, it's also the future. So we need modern public policies that facilitate entrepreneurs to become social economy entrepreneurs. I was going to say it in the coming question, but for instance, in some European countries, you need an awful number of people to create a cooperative. In others, you can create a micro cooperative with 2 or 3 people. So that's something important to keep in mind. We need modern public policies. In terms of what we do our best to promote social economy at EU level through the Social Economy Intergroup, but also to boost its visibility through initiatives as the European Social Economy Awards, Antonella, of which both you and Big Van Boren are part of the jury, and that are taking place on the next 12th of October in Slovenia. So we are trying to give visibility to innovative social economy practices in social innovation, green transition, and digitalization and skills. And I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Victor, for this clear and precise presentation of the different actions. And I know that there are more that Social Economy Europe is undertaking. Now I would like to turn to Vic Van Buren, who is director at the Enterprise Department at ILO in Geneva, but is also currently the chairman of the United Nations Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy, which was mentioned previously by Director General Ryder, and also chairman of the Page Management Board, that is the Partnership for Action in the Green Economy. And OECD is happy to be represented as the only non-one European nation organization in the task force. So Victor, to me, the United Nations Task Force is really a very special example of the will of different stakeholders to gather and to work together to advance social economy. Can you briefly tell us what is its main role and the main actions that the task force is undertaking? And you have 3 minutes, Vic, to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antonella, and hi, everyone. The UN Task Force, what we do is we create partnerships with actors and movements of the SSE in order to accelerate the achievement and localizing of the SDGs. We started in 2013, and we comprised of 17 UN agencies and the OECD, which are our members, and then we have 14 civil society organizations as observers. And this gives us a unique structure to recognize the importance of the SSE as an innovative development approach to tackle issues such as job creation, fighting social exclusion, inequality, and the promotion of gender equality. We also focus on the lack of a global platform, and I think that was one of the important components of what we deal with, that can provide a common understanding of the SSE. The lack of education and awareness and the lack of frameworks for SSE, particularly in developing countries, is a huge challenge. And unless we address that, we're going to battle to mainstream it. I think I often use the analogy of a church. We preach in a church about the SSE, but we fail to reach the potential of taking it beyond the church. And I think that's the task that we have. We see the potential of the SSE to play a greater role in attaining the SDGs, and this is increasingly being acknowledged. And we see this through the action of the OECD, the European Union. These are great examples of taking the lead in action and research. But we've now got to move to a more concerted and joint global implementation, a learning platform with these best practices. And that's what we in the task force want to achieve. There's some low-hanging fruit out there that we've identified. You know, the recognition by all governments of the importance of SSE and mainstreaming this into their policy thinking. The brand management and education. You know, my sons came out of school and didn't know anything about the social economy. And what I'm finding in the debate is that many of the youth are falling into the SSE debate by default rather than by design. This needs to be mainstreamed into education systems so that people can see what the role of the SSE is. Consideration also needs to be given to an internationally accepted definition of the SSE. Furthermore, the task force promotes the global debate as well as looking at regional and national support. But we see our role in being a catalyst in all these areas, putting together all the knowledge and best practices that we can find in taking this forward. So let me stop there. We've got a huge task in the task force, and we look forward to continually working with all the partners that are on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Vic, and you are perfectly right. It is important not only to preach the converted, but also to spread the good news about what social economy can bring to our economy and society beyond this. So let's turn now to Diana Wells, who is President Emerita of Ashoka. Ashoka is a global organization that supports social entrepreneurs as change maker. Diana, social entrepreneurs have been change maker since many, many years ago. And in this fast changing context, how co-creating systemic social change can help us to address the global challenges and to also inspire different business models. And what is Ashoka doing to help to support social entrepreneurs as change makers? 3 minutes for you too.
So first, thank you for being here and being part of this conversation. I've been in a world where the pace of change is increasing so rapidly. We are seeing the inequalities long present are now widening. And Ashoka is seeing a risk of an additional inequality emerging, one where the divide between those who are change makers and those who are not is widening. We've already seen correlations between communities where there is a density of change makers and better health outcomes during this pandemic. And in May of 2020, a YouGov poll in the UK found 71% of parents polled said that they wanted education to focus on enabling their children to be change makers, as defined by being able to take action and activate others in order to address problems and find solutions to benefit everyone. In the same poll, 80% of teachers said they wanted their teaching to focus on enabling children to be change makers. At Ashoka, in emerging markets such as Brazil, Nigeria, and Indonesia, we see a response to this as well, where social economy is moving from the margins to the mainstream. Social entrepreneurs are the R&D of society. They help us see differently so we can do differently. They recognize change is possible, create new organizations and new institutions, roles, jobs, and with that, change makers that they inspire. They're driving systems change. Ashoka today, in addition to sourcing social entrepreneurs for their system change ideas, are inviting them into a global peer network and offering modest financial support. Ashoka is actively building partnerships with business, with educational institutions, government, civil society organizations to leverage collective impact in the world's most pressing problems to build a future together where everyone is a change maker, where everyone has the skills and abilities to contribute to a greater good. We're failing our children if we're preparing them for repetition of the past rather than building their ability to thrive and drive a world of change.
Thank you very much, Diana, also for underlying that being a role model and inspiring other social entrepreneurs can be really a powerful tool and can make a difference. Now, I would like to turn to Laurence Quark, who is the Secretary General of the Global Forum on Social Innovation, an important global network gathering local governments and civil society networks to advance social economy. So, Laurence, in our OECD work, we do see that more and more often local governments adopt strategies to support social economy. And this time, this can even result in more support provided by the national level. So, Laurence, can you please tell us in 3 minutes how Global Social Economy Forum is fostering this cooperation between governments and social economy organizations, especially in the recovery period. The floor is yours, Laurence.
Thank you very much, Antonella. Also, thank you very much for inviting me to this important panel. GSF is a global network of local government and social solidarity economy organizations working together to promote social solidarity economy as a strategy for the local development and the achievement of sustainable development goals. We help them to work together, solve local problems, and co-create public policies to build a sustainable social solidarity economy ecosystem. Since last year, we have seen how fragile our territories can be as its consequences of the COVID-19 have impacted all shapers of our society and economy, aggravating the situation of people living in vulnerability and inequality with the growing gap between rich and poor. Our members said in a recent survey how wide and deep the damage from the pandemic is to the social solidarity economy sector, emphasizing the threat was more severe to the people in informal sector, especially for women and youth. For many social solidarity economy organizations, the enterprise had difficulties in keeping their businesses, obliged to change their model of business due to the reduced sales. However, some made successful transition of creating values, especially in digital technology or medical and health subsectors. Some of GSF members of local government, understanding the strength and the role of social solidarity economy, have quickly implemented special and tailored support programs for social solidarity economy. For example, the city of Praia in Capo Verde entrusted social solidarity economy sectors to implement emergency food basket delivery to the vulnerable household. City of Mondragon provide financial support, subsidies, and new aid program for social solidarity economy organizations to reinforce their capacities to deliver good quality of social services. Taipei City included social enterprise in their 9 short-term economic relief measures, consisting of tax deferral and reduction, land exemption or postponement, loan interest reduction, subsidies, and financial support for laborers. City of Montreal implemented 2 economic recovery plans in 2020 and 2021 to help social solidarity economy actors to recover from the impact of COVID-19. Montreal 2030 plan presented as a strategic orientation for next 10 years, prioritizing the importance of developing a greener and more inclusive economy through circular economy, social economy, local and eco-responsible facilitation, and the creation of new quality ecological jobs. The Montreal City, together with the Quebec government, have offered financial support measures, such as assistance for business training, health and safety at work, and even training for business repositioning. As a result, it is reported that social economy enterprises have achieved more contract by at least 37%. These are some examples how we work to make local government and social solidarity economy actors to work together.
Thank you very much, Laurence, for having gifted us with so many examples and very inspiring one. So I would like now to turn to our last panelist, Shigeru Tanaka, who is joint coordinator of another important network, RIPES, which is the Intercontinental Network for the Promotion of Social and Solidarity Economy. Shigeru is also the coordinator of the Asian Solidarity Economy Forum in Tokyo, which is organized by ASEC, the Asian Solidarity Economy Council. So, Shigeru, can you please give us some concrete examples of how social and solidarity economy have contributed to reduce inequalities during the pandemics and also to rebuild communities? And you have also 3 minutes to answer this question. The floor is yours, Shigeru.
Okay, so thank you very much for this invitation. It's a great honor to be here. So RIPES, if you are not familiar, is the only network that has members in all continents except for Antarctica that is based on the grassroots SSE institutions. So I here want to share some stories from the grassroots. And so at RIPES, we think of SSE not in the legal form of the institutions, but rather on how they are operated and how they function. And more specifically, how democratically these institutions are being operated, for example. And it is this democracy factor that I feel is one of the most relevant factors when it comes to assessing the resilience and the power to recover against COVID. So, for example, when schools and childcare were closed and most dominantly women had to stay home to care for the children in many countries and cultures, their situations differed greatly on how many kids, how old they were, and of course also the individual characteristics of the child. And in SSE institutions where these individually different situation of parents, when they were able to voice their situations and take control of how they operate the workplace or the working conditions, they're able to stay in the workforce as opposed to having to leave the workforce. And same thing with the recovery. When things start to open up, but not everything starts to open up, it is the adjustment to these different conditions and the workers being able to openly discuss their workable hours and working conditions that allows operations to resume while accommodating individual life challenges. And we know of many workplaces that operated in such ways. Some have made it possible to bring kids to the workplace and took turns taking care of the kids. Other SSE institutions allowed parents to take care of the kids during the day and then work in the evening for an adjustment of the working hours. And one might say, well, for-profit companies, some of them also have this flexible working condition, and to which I would say, yes, indeed, and good for them. But what I'm saying is that if democratic processes were built into the institutions and the workers were empowered into voicing their situation, they were able to secure their own workplace rather than wait for that one open-minded boss to offer them a solution. And the difference here is that one is a privilege and the other is a basic right of the workers. And to be able to voice your needs, you need that as a right. And a democratically run SSE institution allows this to be a right of the workers. And the democratic process and rights are what matters, and not whether or not the companies offer this flexible work hour system. And if you say this system is great and a one-size-fits-all blanket, this flexible work hour thing is good, then it really only helps those who can be helped by that system, and it doesn't necessarily help everyone and can actually deepen inequalities in certain situations. So this local control and worker control is what allows a much different workplace to flourish even under challenging COVID situations. And that's, for example, some of the things that SSE gave solutions to.
Thank you very much, Shigeru, also for having reminded us a very important element that the democratic governance of social and solidarity economy organization is real important to build resilience and to accompany a sustainable recovery. So we will move now to the second round of questions after having a bit understood how networks can help supporting social economy. Now we will focus on what actions need to be done to develop the social economy further. And I go back again now to Laurence. And Laurence, in your opinion, from the perspective of GSETs, what are the missing actors and the alliances that needs to be strengthened to better support social economy ecosystem, especially now that political momentum, as we have heard, is growing for social and solidarity economy. Again, 3 minutes, Laurence, please.
Thank you, Antonella. I believe that this is a very critical time for social solidarity economy actors and for local government to engage in active dialogue on how to institutionalize their strategic collaboration to reinforce their capacities to meet the complex challenges faced by cities around the world. It is too early to know the exact impact of COVID-19 pandemic on poverty, but the early indications show that poor people in all countries have been the most affected, and there will be millions of people pushed back into extreme poverty. Concurrently, climate change can no longer be treated as hypothetical. According to the estimation of the World Bank, more than 143 million climate refugees will migrate from 3 regions of Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Southeast Asia by 2050. So to respond to your question, who are the missing actors alliance to consolidate social solidarity economy ecosystems? I would say the authoritative international organizations such as UN, OECD, engaged with more institutional commitment up to the level of global changes we face. I think we urgently need the leadership of OECD in this, especially proposing an international norm such as the guidelines on legal framework and public policies of social economy as a comprehensive solution to better respond to global challenges such as Build Back Better strategy from COVID-19 pandemic and climate change. I understand that the publication of guidelines on the legal framework to leverage further development of social economy as outcome of the global action is already programmed. However, I hope that these OECD guidelines could be developed as a set of recommendations addressed to government and policymakers of member countries of OECD. These guidelines will provide non-binding principles and standards for legal and policy framework on social economy to government and policymakers as a strategy to achieve an inclusive, sustainable, and ecologically coherent development model as the only multilaterally agreed and comprehensive code of public policies and legal conduct that could be followed up by a review of progress and the measurement of social impact of social economy over the next few years. I believe that these guidelines, through peer review of good practice among member states of OECD, would build an evidence-based information collected on the potential of the social solidarity economy as a strategy to solve our common global challenges. Lastly, I would say we need an alliance with the mass media and communication sector to build a greater recognition and visibility on the role and potential of social solidarity economy in this critical time. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Laurence, for mapping all the different stakeholders that need to be there to further develop social economy, including social media. And I think that social media are now more and more engaging in this because they start understanding the importance of contributing to raise awareness around the performance of social economy. Vic, my other question for you will be, we see that social and solidarity economy is really at the crossroad of many global challenges and concern, especially linking it to sustainable development goals and green economy. So how do you think that policymakers should better link social economy to sustainable development goals and the green economy? Again, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. When we started with, and I like Nadim's reference to mainstreaming the debate, mainstreaming the social and solidarity economy. And the first step is we've got to mainstream the debate on social and solidarity economy. But then at the same time, in all policy debates, whether it's social and solidarity economy or others, we need to actively build in and consciously address the link to the environment. The days are gone where you can plant a few trees and put in your glossy report at the end of the year and say, we've addressed the environmental issues. This is no longer a nice to have, but it's an imperative. We cannot develop policies and then say, okay, it's fine now, let's go back to the policy and see how we can factor in a few words that talk about the environment. And that's how we've been dealing with it in the past. It needs to be factored in from the start. Addressing social challenges can also address environmental challenges. We already have the global plan, the SDGs, which tackles all of the social problems and the environment. In SDG 8, we heard the DG Guy Ryder referring to how important that is. And in an UNDESA report, it states that social enterprises can create 600 million jobs over the next 15 years and support sustainable development challenges. But however, these jobs must be both green jobs and decent jobs. Then we're starting to make a difference if we can make sure that the delivery covers those two aspects. Now, we often hear of governments now talking about a UN resolution. We support that, and I think in that process we can build greening. But I think my 3 minutes is up, so let me stop there because I can go on preaching on this for a long time. Thank you.
Antonella, you're on mute. Antonella.
Sorry. After many years, you keep not clicking on the right button. So thank you very much, Vic, also for reminding us that in order to achieve SDG, a paradigm shift needs to be done. And now I will turn again to Victor, for whom I have another question. Victor, what do you think are the 3 more urgent actions that government should take to support social economy building back better?
Super question, Antonella. I will try to replay as briefly as Vic did a second ago. First of all, what we need to understand, and I think that it was very clearly pointed out by the French State Secretary, is that the social economy is like a sailboat. We are swimming counter current, right? Social economy is another way of doing business in a world in which the main way of doing business, which is formatted, which is in culture, which is everywhere, is the profit maximizing one. And often, as the colleague from RIPES mentioned, with a charismatic leader that, of course, has done everything by himself, which is, of course, false. Everything is the result of collective success. So let's keep that in mind. Also, because we need the specific policies for the social economy. To reply to your question as briefly as possible, first, as I said before, we need a modern public policy, a modern legal and policy environment. Shigeru Tanaka from RIPES a moment ago was saying, laws are not that important. Look, the 3 main values of social economy indeed are primacy of people over capital, democratic governance, one person, one vote, and reinvestment of profits. If those are not enforced, if those are just a declaration of intentions, they can get lost as tears in the rain. We need laws, we need legal forms, and the main legal forms in the European Union, for instance, are cooperatives, mutuals, associations, foundations, social enterprises, and many other legal forms which are specific to each member state. And we need modern laws to start up this business, because if not, it's complex, because if not, people churn out and do not start up social economy businesses. So a modern policy framework is very much needed. Then, of course, access to finance, we need to be present in the recovery plans. And I think that, I mean, you have done a beautiful introduction. Also, your colleague Nadim Ahmad from the OECD on how social economy is being mainstreamed in the recovery plans of Spain, France, Portugal, and hopefully of many other member states. And for that, by the way, we also need capacity building. And by the way, we also need to take into account that there is a market failure for social economy accessing finance. So we need a specific treatment for the social economy. And then two elements. We need to think out of the box, and this is like something not for governments, but for the social economy. If we want to go in the European Union, we represent 8% of the GDP, between 6 and 8. If we want to go beyond that, we need to think out of the box. We need to build alliances. We need to be able of acting transnationally. It can be the strawberry replication model of renewable energy cooperatives, associations of social economy enterprises, as it has happened in France with a very cool company called Les Licornes, which puts together work integration social enterprises as Emmaus, but also very modern and interesting cooperatives. So that's an important point. And one last element, building back better is also preserving our democracies and strengthening our democracies. In a world in which authoritarianism is on the rise, right? In a world where dictatorships are on the rise, and by the way, very cool book by Anne Applebaum on that. Social economy is democracy, not only democracy in business, the cooperative model, one worker, one vote, also democracy, civil society, associations. We need to boost collective action to defend and to strengthen our democracies. One example of that, and with that I will shut up, in 2014, no one was speaking about the European Action Plan for the social economy that today is becoming a reality. From Social Economy Europe, we proposed the European Action Plan for the social economy. It was civil society, it was the social economy leading this public policy. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Victor. I find it very interesting that you are saying that thinking out of the box is needed, and indeed it is needed, but also to put the right element into the right boxes is equally important. And now I will turn again to Shigeru, and I would like to ask you, Shigeru, from your perspective, how do you see social and solidarity economy evolving during the crisis at global level, and more particularly in Asia Pacific? 3 minutes.
Thank you for that. I'll just make one correction before I go into the main thing. I did say that we do not look at the legal entity, but I did not say laws were unimportant. We just look at the legal entity because many laws do not mandate the democratic process, and that's why laws will be important to mandate that. And going into the question, so the COVID pandemic has renewed our awareness to the importance of local and worker control and thus an empowered citizenry, as it has said before. And not only in the workplace, but also throughout society, as my previous speaker said as well. And so in the Philippines, for example, a number of banana plantation workers were from prominent global banana brands have been sacked under what I would say the guise of COVID response and a workplace restructuring. But what this has done is this has left many workers completely stranded when they need the economic power of the grand corporations the most under this COVID economic crisis. And so what happened was a union that cared for their workers assisted the unemployed in setting up community gardens and by setting up agricultural cooperatives to sustain their livelihoods. And this is actually saving lives. And so we wouldn't necessarily count for-profit corporations, the global brands and their unions as members of SSC typically, and I wouldn't on a usual basis, but it's a fact that the labor unions were the seeds for the SSC entities that burgeoned after this. And so it's an example where the seed that fostered collective citizenry and collective engagement that is growing into SSC through the pandemic response. And it's not only in the COVID response, but also in the increasing cases for the climate disasters. We see resilient communities rise from desperate situations through collective actions. And we are already seeing these many cases of SSC, or at least SSC-like responses that have a factor of SSC built into it in the rebuilding efforts come out from the grassroots, even from places where we did not expect it to come from. So we must seize this opportunity and encourage more to take place, not just as a response for the crisis phase, but as an ongoing way of restructuring society. And these precious seeds of collective and empowered citizenry can be seen in many places that we did not expect to see before in the pandemic. Even in Tokyo, where I live, where people refer to us as a desert of human relationships. You leave at dawn, come up close to midnight, there is no localized relationship in Tokyo. But now the situation is different when we see new localized relationship form under the COVID situation. And why would we re-separate these localized communities that are now gradually forming? We don't want to do that. We want to build something different from what we had before the crisis, one where localized ties and these out-of-box thinking is valued.
Thank you, Shigeru. This is a very interesting example, and it shows us clearly how very often solutions can be found at grassroots level. So, which show the creativity of communities when some social innovation has to be provided out of needs. So, Diana, we mentioned before the change makers' attitude of social entrepreneurs. And this was clearly shown, of course, during the pandemic crisis, but there have been many major transformations before this that social entrepreneurs have already achieved. Can you just mention some of these, and 3 minutes as usual?
Sure. First of all, I would say no individual changes the system, but our fellows are actively building enabling ecosystems to build systems change. And those changes include market dynamics and value chains, public policy, changing industry norms and social norms by changing mindsets. So they're creating solutions that others copy and enabling a culture of change making. I'm frequently asked to give an example of the social entrepreneur who's gotten, who is a household name. And I think one of my responses has always been that social entrepreneurs are driven by the change they want to see and to get that solution into the hands of as many people as possible. They're not focused on building brand recognition. And my example here is Florence Nightingale, not only because we've just passed her century, but because and not only because of the pandemic, but she was my favorite example before the pandemic. And she's widely recognized as authoring this idea of medical triage, even in her work in the Crimean War, and then coming back to institutionalize what we now think of as modern nursing practices. And so any of us who have received urgent medical care have probably benefited from her idea, but there is not a plaque with her brand in any urgent care or hospital around the globe. But she's a social entrepreneur who has changed the pattern in society. Ashoka has, in our 40 years, has invited over 3,700 people into our network who are changing the pattern in society, and doing that over time because big change takes time. The one other person I would say is Bill Drayton for having coined the term social entrepreneur, is the reason why a number of us are here today having this conversation. And in building Ashoka, offering and the recognition that social entrepreneurs exist across the globe and the concept across all cultures.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Diana. And we are doing very well in terms of timing, so we can go straight to the third round of questions. And I will restart from you, Diana, because you mentioned some of these major transformation. And I would be very interested in knowing what policymakers can do better to to support this creation of enabling ecosystem, as you reminder, by social entrepreneurs, but also how they can help to attract new talents, and also to increase awareness in civil society around the importance of social entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurs, and social economy. In minutes.
Sure. So there's the Changemakers Library is now an app that is the encyclopedia of Ashoka social entrepreneurs that we've elected since our beginning. The first thing I would say is integrate social entrepreneurs as stakeholders rather than providers. They have real knowledge of the social issues, dynamics, more than politics. They're proximate leaders close to their problems, which is why their solutions are effective. And they're deeply committed to realizing these changes. They're betting their lives on these changes. So integrating social entrepreneurs as stakeholders, directing funding toward systems change, toward building the infrastructure to enable large-scale lasting change, such as policy, rather than simply directing funding toward direct service models. Direct service is important to prove cases, but if we just stop there, we will not achieve lasting systems change. And toward this end, I can refer you to a report, Embracing Complexity, that came out in January 2020, designed to help philanthropists fund systems change. And a second report, New Allies for Government, which we collaborated as with Embracing Complexity with other social entrepreneurship networks and organizations to offer examples of how social entrepreneurs are new allies for government. And I could stop there.
Thank you very much, Diana. I think it is very important what you are suggesting, that we really need to stop understanding social economy just as a provider of services and good, and this is obviously very important, and we have seen the importance of it, especially during the pandemics, but social economy actors are very well equipped also to detect very early the problems on the ground, and they can really work out solutions in partnership with the government, so they can really be trusted partner and stakeholder. Vic, again to you, how can, in your opinion, policymaker, from your perspective, from the perspective of your important network at the European level, how can policymakers can work and networks can work together to unleash the transformative power of social economy, and what can OECD do to continue to help to mainstream social economy globally?
I guess that the question was for me. The problem is that Vic and I almost share the same name.
Yes, it was for Victor. For Victor, yeah. Yes, sorry.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Yeah, I mean, very briefly on collaboration and working together. I think that the example of the European Parliament Social Economy Intergroup is a very good one, right? We have 80 MEPs from the main political parties working together to mainstream social economy in EU legislation and in their not only legislative but also in their opinions before public policy is developed, and doing so in cooperation with the social economy sector, and in this case Social Economy Europe is the secretariat. So that's a very good example. There are many other examples. The best social economy laws in the European Union, so you know, and this is also important because I don't want to generate confusion. Social economy laws, by the way, are at the top of the house. To have a social economy law, before you have all the social economy actors, the diversity that forms the social economy regulated. And that's very diverse, as I was saying before. And by the way, it can go beyond the traditional legal forms that I mentioned before. And even actors that are not part of the social economy, because maybe they don't reinvest profits, can be part not of the social economy, but yes, of the social economy ecosystem, because they interact with us. It can be the case of B Corps. Traditionally, they are not social economy, but they are part of our world. They are an important part of our world, right? So that's a good example. Regarding the OECD, I have tell you this several times, Antonella, what you're doing is a revolution, because you are pushing us to talk. You are pushing us to share. And that's the best way. You're pushing us to share on social economy, public policies, and legal frameworks, sharing about public procurement, which is a fantastic way of promoting the social economy, including social considerations, environmental considerations, division into lots by principle, to share a bit the game and not end up in a situation with big players eat all the cake, right? So we divide lots to make sure that there is game for everyone, also SMEs and also the social economy. So sharing good practices about that between Mexico, Brazil, the US, Canada, Europe, India, and Korea, and other countries has been possible through these PLPs and through these EU-funded OECD Global Action, which is truly revolutionary. It is also possible through the UN Task Force. And that's an amazing fora in which we all meet together with UN institutions. What a privilege. So to shut up, because I tend to speak a lot, what we need to do now, what we need now is more structuration. We have the immense gift of having the OECD, the European Union, the UN Task Force, putting all of us around at the table. We have amazing networks. We have a strong force, the strong force of RIPES International, of GCEF, of Ashoka, of SSC International Fora, and so on and so forth. Now what we need is to share an agenda. I mean, we have the forces, we have the interest of the institutions. We are getting from margins to the mainstream. We need to sit also among us, talk also among us, and structurate to build a future, because the future, I have no doubt, is ours. The French State Secretary said it before. This is a social economy is the present, social economy is a heritage, but social economy is also a promise of future. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Victor, and we hear you perfectly, and OECD is glad if it is helping, is contributing to something which is useful. Laurence, I would like to go back to you. Let's keep focusing on local governments, which are very important and which are full part of the work on social economy in the Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, regions and cities. So how they can really help social and solidarity economy to go further, to build more inclusive and sustainable recovery. You gave us a number of very inspiring examples before, but I am sure that you can add more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonella. I think many of us has spoken about social solidarity economy is currently playing a very critical role in addressing and mitigating the short and long-term impact of COVID-19 that can significantly contribute to a paradigm change. In the short term, social solidarity economy actors have collective solutions that strengthen public services and complement government action. In the long term, social solidarity economy provides economic alternatives, promote inclusive and sustainable production and consumption models, and strengthen access to many basic human rights for all. As growing number of policymakers, government, and international organizations are paying their attention to the value and potential of social solidarity economy as one of the most viable alternative policies to build better the post-COVID-19 future, many local governments are also interested to promote social solidarity economy in a context of growing demand for public services and declining fiscal transfers from central government. To take full advantage of this potential of social solidarity economy, it is essential to integrate it into societal and governance process. National legal and police frameworks for social solidarity economy are obviously crucial preconditions, but arguably not sufficient to create enabling environment for the development of social solidarity economy. More specific conditions and mechanisms should be put in place at the local level to enable a stronger social solidarity economy sector and a more effective response to the local challenges to address. Such an integrated ecosystem perspective requires that SSC-friendly policies and institutions, which should be designed and implemented within systems and framework of broader local development strategies, as social solidarity economy is increasingly recognized as a key driver of the transformative territorial dynamics. To identify the optimal conditions under which social solidarity economy can thrive, it is therefore crucial to explore to what extent and how it can be connected more efficiently and organically at the local level. Therefore, local governments should coordinate their policies and actions with national government by aligning their policies and programs to avoid policy incoherence. However, in constant dialogue and reflection with social solidarity economy stakeholders who must be part of these discussions and negotiations at all times. This process of co-creation would be a condition to build more inclusive and sustainable society. I believe that it is a time for local government to act, to get to know better social solidarity economy actors, to listen to them, identifying their capabilities and potential roles for the local economic and territorial development in order to build more inclusive and sustainable societies. The adoption of co-constructed regulatory and legislative frameworks, as well as public and local policies in favor of social solidarity economy is key to strengthen sustainable ecosystem for social solidarity economy. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Lawrence. This is indeed a very important element in the narrative for social economy, and OECD insists a lot of the need of co-constructing policies. And so, Shigeru, linking exactly to what Lawrence has just reminded us, what is RIPE's opinion on the need to co-construct policies to build effective social economy organizations?
So, and we, myself, and the members at RIPES are, of course, always willing to co-construct public policies with local and national governments, as well as with international institutions. But if I may pose some questions or discussion points, we also need a change in the paradigm of how we evaluate SSC interventions. So for one thing, we need to create mechanisms of process-oriented valuation of projects, not just the outcomes of the project, but a slightly more lengthy process that looks at how decisions were made within the institutions. And I'm saying this because it's not just the outputs of the products, how many things were made, but to borrow one of our colleagues' language, did the institution listen to the change makers' voices? Was there a receptive mechanism against these voices that come up to the empowered people? And as I said before, it is an empowered democratic process that builds resilience in the communities. So a more process-oriented evaluation or simply an added emphasis could be important when we co-construct public policies. Now, the second is valuing the preventive measures, is what I always say. Like in the previous example, SSC workplaces did not have to lay off the workers, but found ways to go around the challenges through collective decision-making. But these institutions didn't, quote unquote, create new jobs in the recovery process. They were not lost to begin with, but it's the creation of jobs that gets a bigger headline. And so how can we change this? Preventing the damages from happening is much more important, especially when it's working with vulnerable communities. So no hungry children is much better than having 1,000 hungry children and then offering solutions to 100 households. And so how do we give value to these workplaces that did not lose the jobs and thus did not create new jobs and did not give the policymakers an exciting headline? And so this valuing of the more preventive measures is also something we want to take into consideration when we look at the impacts of SSE. And it is these changes in the yardstick or ruler. These are just two examples, but it's a change of this yardstick that we think is very important in thinking of co-constructing public policies. And once these evaluation mechanisms are changed, I'm sure we will find waves of new interventions and ideas coming because of this change. And to raise some realistic hopes, as one of our previous speakers said, I think a social clause for public procurement is a step in this direction. So adding the social clause is essentially adding another yardstick to the system. And I believe the EU made a good decision on that. But I think more should and can take place too.
Thank you very much. Vic, the last question for you before we give the floor to the audience. What is, in your opinion, the next frontier for social and solidarity economy, and how do you see social and solidarity economy in 2030?
Thank you. You know, the world is crying out for a value system that recognizes human beings for what we are. We're not machines. The human-centered approach for recovery has been debated over and over again, particularly given the impact, the negative impact of COVID. What we've got is we've got the model. It's the glue that binds societies. We don't have to go and reinvent the model towards 2030. Now, when I bought my first property, my father told me there's three things you need to look for: location, location, location. Now, when we're talking about the SSE going forward towards 2030, there's three words, the three principles that come to my mind is scale, scale, and scale. Because we've got the model, we need to scale up now, and we haven't got that right yet. The other one that can go as a subsidiary three principles is education, education, education. And if we can get that mix right, then we're going to start making the impact and reach the potential that the social and solidarity should be reaching. Now, this global social deficit has really dramatically exacerbated the poverty of people. And then we have the climate change one, which we've mentioned as well. So there's a call for a new thinking and concerted global action, a call for models of entrepreneurship and social organization. And in this regard, the social and solidarity economy is so well positioned. I think it's time to take a step back and at the global level, and for global leaders now to entrench this into the debate and not see it on the periphery. Likewise, at national level, at local level, or provincial levels, we've got to start mainstreaming the role and the debate around the social and solidarity economy. And once again, I sound like a preacher, so I'm going to stop here and hand back to you, Antonella.
Thank you very much. This was really brilliant and an excellent conclusion for the third round of questions. So if you allow now me to do so, I see that we have some questions in the chat, which I hope you would like to address. So the first one I see, some are for OECD, but I will give the priority to our panelists, and then I'll try to catch up. So Victor, I think you have already started to address this question, but it concerns the need for modern policies. You have already started to reply, but and again, which are the main challenges that needs to be addressed more urgently? Is inclusivity an issue? And I think that this is an important one. Please keep it short if you can.
Okay, so basically what I understand is what does it mean modern public policies? So what it means and those, what it means is again learning from each other, not reinventing the wheel, and trying to replicate and adapt to our national context, which works in other parts. Again, very important, adapt it to our national context, heritage, traditions, reality. That's very important. But for instance, work integration social enterprises in their many forms across the European Union. So companies whose main objective is to integrate in the labor market people at risk of exclusion. It can be people with disabilities, but also many other collectives. Is this model of enterprise possible everywhere? Is this model of enterprise having the adequate financial taxation support everywhere? Let's learn from each other. A social work integration social enterprise in Spain, a shelter workshop actually in Spain, has to have 70% of workers having a disability. That leads to a different, of course, fiscal treatment, a different treatment in terms of subsidies, and so on and so forth. And by the way, many of these companies are very competitive in the market. The French State Secretary a moment ago was talking about ESUS. I think that exists in France to give a special fiscal and state aid treatment to some social economy enterprises called of social utility, social and environmental utility. So let's explore that. In France also, they have found a way. In France, they have invented something very cool. There is a never-ending debate about what's the social economy and what are its main legal forms. And in France, they have said, look, these are the main legal forms in France according to our history and our legislation. But if any other enterprise wants to be a social economy enterprise, they can. They have to modify its statutes, and we will apply controls, of course. So that's a very cool innovation from the French system, from the French social and solidarity economy law. So basically, that's modern public policies. Public procurement is also a very good example, and there are many others. Again, the main revolution is talking to each other, not trying to reinvent the wheel. Everyone trying to have a certain bureaucratic creativity in its little corner and sharing. And that's why the PLPs are important. That's why the UN Task Force is important, and that's why this exercise is very relevant.
Thank you very much, Victor. I see a very interesting question I read from the chat that is for whomever want to address this, but maybe particularly to Shigeru, as he represents most of the grassroots perspective. The question reads like this: apart from all the positive aspects mentioned in the previous discussion, do you believe that the process of mainstreaming social and solidarity economy also entails certain risks? And if so, which are the most relevant ones and how to overcome them? Big question, Shigeru. Would you like to try and address it?
Well, I can try to address it, but I don't have answers, but I can raise thinking points, food for thought. So, for example, in the first example that I mentioned, there is a workplace of women, a cooperative, where in the COVID situation, maybe their products declined, and so they have 80% of the earnings. Now, it's easy to just take one out of 5% out, but what if the cooperative said, no, we want to keep working together? And they said they accept a 20% cut from everyone across the board so that we can all work together. And that's a cooperative decision, beautiful in the story. But the point is, what if then that undermines minimum wage? So if the people agree that they want to emphasize the working together and not sacking anyone, that they're willing to share the burden together, but it does go below minimum wage, then is that place even legal to work in? And it's these kind of questions that make it difficult for SSC enterprises to make localized specific decisions that care for the community, but can sometimes go against the law. And the difficulty of mainstreaming SSC is, okay, then what if we made exclusion or some cases where exemptions from the minimum wage? Then what would happen is big corporations will immediately say they made a collective decision to cut wages, and there would be a huge wage cut in various vulnerable industries. And so the process at which this decision-making happened is also very important. That's why I emphasize the process and the democratic decision-making. But we do have these cases where the collective will and the empathy sometimes goes in counter with local laws or laws that are supposed to be there to protect certain workers, where if we took that out, that would actually undermine some other workers. And so this workaround and how to combat these situations is, I think, the difficult part of working with or mainstreaming SSE in one part, and also where some of the solutions are as well. So it's a debate that has to take place. And I don't have an answer.
I'd love to jump in just because I think you so articulated what Ashoka thinks of as the change-making skills and abilities that young people need to face the world they're headed toward. And empathy is the first one. And this comes directly from our talking to our social entrepreneurs. And what inspired them to start was their empathy for another person, another group, where they actively stepped in to problem solve. Along with that is collaborative teamwork, inclusive leadership, and ideally practicing change making while young, because it's that muscle when it grows, and the power of recognizing one can build change that goes on to inspire young people to live, to choose to continue a life filled with the purpose they want to find. And we see that so much in this younger generation.
You're muted, Antonella.
Brilliant, the two of you, and clearly this discussion will deserve a specific session. We will think of it for another time. But there is another small question linked to mainstream, and whoever wants to reply, please do so. Do you agree that part of mainstreaming the social and solidarity economy is also in branding and marketing? I think that the issue has already been raised slightly by Laurence, who underlined the importance of social media, but please, who wants to address this?
I would jump in that I don't know about branding, but marketing in terms of storytelling, because it's storytelling that inspires others to act, to engage, to build agency, and also simply laying bare the how-tos that can inspire individuals to give themselves permission to be change makers and social entrepreneurs down the line.
If I may jump in too, very briefly, I think that the answer is also definitely yes, and maybe true. And by the way, we see many examples today of even big cooperative groups that in the past were not publicizing their cooperative dimension. They were cooperatives internally. They were applying the democratic principles. They were reinvesting profits, but were not communicating that to the world. And today they are. The co-op in the UK, for instance, which is a big retailer, is first of all, their name is the co-op, but also it's having amazing social campaigns, doing its utmost to welcome and employ refugees and migrants among other countries coming from Afghanistan in this specific moment. And I have other examples from Spain coming to mind. And maybe something connected to other questions. What are the biggest challenges of mainstreaming, right? So I think that very quickly, social economy is blowing in the wind. Social economy is it goes with the wind of the current times, right? One of the challenges is stopping in the public discourse. Social economy, and this was also mentioned by Diana before, needs strategies. Strategies need time. As it was said before, many times we need a specific one-stop shops, because as we are a salmon, and salmon is not the normal animal in the zoo, it's a different one going in a different direction. We need people that understand this business model to support its creation, to support its founding, its financing, and so on. Yeah, that's it.
If I could come in, Antonella, is that okay?
Yes, sure.
You know, when we talk about mainstream, and I'll deal with the branding one as well very quickly, is in the developing economy where I come from, I come from South Africa, and the whole African continent is a good example. We don't have regulatory frameworks in place. So it's all good and well to talk about we need social economy to develop the social and solidarity economy, but unless you've got a regulatory framework in place and a national policy, it's just not going to go anywhere. And so we need to move from subsistence activities to opportunity that exists out there. And that's one of the areas. On the branding side, I think that's a huge opportunity for us. And I think the UN task force plus all the OECD and all the players we've been talking about, I think the time is right for us to collectively come together and talk about a branding strategy. It doesn't help that we go in bits and pieces. We need a global branding strategy. And I think when we have our upcoming strategic session in the UN task force, that'll be one of the primary debates I think that we need to have. Thank you.
Thank you to you all, terrific. And I think, Laurence, you also wanted to say something on the question on the biggest obstacle to the development of social economy in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Antonella. I was writing my response in the chat tabs. I think the main challenges that needed to be addressed to the development of SSC in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic is different probably from countries to countries, and especially from developed countries such as the European countries in Quebec. I mean, some of the examples that I have shared also in my input, that where both national and sub-national government have responded very quickly with relevant and tailored support programs. But in fact, the biggest obstacles for the social solidarity economy organizations happened in many developing countries, including social solidarity economy organization enterprise engaged in fair trade organizations, or very in informal economy of many developing countries, where even they are not recognized, they are not invisible, but in fact, they do represent the economy, real economy of the majority of population. So because of informality and non-recognition of their statute and their existence, most of those social solidarity economy organization enterprise have been excluded from national or sub-national economic financial measures offered to the companies. So they are not only struggling for the existence of their business, but they had to really struggle to maintain employment, especially employment which are very central value and commitment of their business in terms of putting people at the center with really committed values and principles. We have realized that I think we have provided a very short 3 months support to about 56 those social solidarity economy organizations in developing countries in Africa, in Asia, in last year. And I think they have responded to our survey that in fact, even this very short-term small support have allowed them to maintain their employment up to 90% and some even 100%. So I think this kind of provide global funds of solidarity to support those social solidarity economy organizations which are still struggling with their informality and non-recognition by the state would be a very important action that we have to probably promote. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Laurence. Diana, sorry, I have a question for you. So you mentioned before system change, and this is very important, but another element of this, which is equally important, please be very short, just give a sense and create appetite for this to be developed. So when do we know when these changes have happened, and how do we measure this? And this will be the last question.
Mm-hmm. Since the late 1990s, Ashoka has been asking this question, how do we know when a systems change has happened? And I will not presume to have the only answers, and I'm glad this conversation is finally in the fore and that many are asking this. But there are two elements. One is to move beyond simply looking at service delivery, and in fact, look at what proxy measures could be for a systems change. And I mentioned those before: policy change, market dynamics, shifts in government funding that is enabling or lowering the barrier of entry and success of social entrepreneurs to build systems change. changing industry norms, changing societal norms so more people can be change makers. And at the end of the day, what we've learned from our social entrepreneurs over 40 years globally is how much they are enabling others to be change makers because they're giving roles and inspiring people.
Thank you very much. So we are about now to end the session. I really want to thank you everyone, our wonderful panelists we shared with generosity their thoughts and their knowledge. And it is very difficult for me to have to share some takeaways. There are so many, but of course, I would say that we have all agreed from your different perspectives that social economy is indeed a driving force for change, that everyone has a stake to make this change happen, be this international organization, civil society, private sector, public sector, national level, subnational level, grassroots organizations. And we all agree that the transformational role of social economy can have really a long-lasting effect on our society, and that it is really important that governments work together with the other stakeholders. And to quickly address a few questions that I think were meant for the OECD in the chat and that concerned procurement, tax, and fiscal policies, and information whether we have profiles of the social economy for OECD countries. My answer is not yet. We are working on it, so stay tuned, and hopefully we will present these results at the conference that we will organize next week. So thank you again for being with us. I personally very much appreciated this discussion. I will invite all of you to reconnect tomorrow at 1 because we will have two extremely interesting sessions. One on legal framework as a tool of visibility recognition, so how to make the most of legal frameworks, and another discussion with different stakeholders on the lesson learned from COVID. So thank you very much. Have a good end of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Antonella, and thank you very much, all the panelists.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.